Today we're going to be learning Masechet Gittin Daf Nun Bet. We're going to start at the Mishnah at the top of the Daf. Yitomim shesamchu etzel bal habayit o shemina lahem aviim apitropos. We have a case where we have orphans who basically are fed by a particular person. That person kind of takes on rights because they feed them on being a type of apitropos for them. Okay, like someone who can handle their property, their money, all that stuff. Or, and we're going to see exactly what the relevance is for our purposes today, or at least in the very first part of this Mishnah, or if the father designated that person to be an apitropos for them, he's obligated, and this is a tikkun olam, and we'll talk about why it's a tikkun olam and why it's not a basic halacha, that he needs to take the masrot on their fruit. So if they have fields, he has to take the tithes. Why is that? Or what is the issue? Well, the issue is that normally a person cannot tithe someone else's produce without their knowledge. Now, if these children are young orphans, they don't have halachic knowledge, so there's no way to do it with their knowledge. So basically, anytime you do it is without their knowledge, and then we have a problem because you're not allowed to do that. So if that's the case, we have another problem, which is they can't do it themselves. Someone can't do it for them. So now they're going to be eating fruits without tithing the produce. That's really a problem, or whatever, right? With fruits, vegetables, wheat, whatever it is. So therefore, we basically allow the apitropos to do it for them, mishum tikkun olam. Okay. One second. Okay. Now we have a machloket in the Mishnah. Apitropos sheminu avi yitomim yishava. This apitropos has to swear when the children get older. He has to say, "Listen, I didn't do anything wrong. I swear that blah blah blah. I took care of everything properly." Right? You can see why this would be necessary because no one's really checking up on him. And how do we know that he didn't abuse his privileges, take stuff for himself? This is always a problem when you have someone working for you, right? So how do we know? He takes an oath. But minuhu beitin lo yishava. But if the court, he's a court-appointed apitropos, there's a difference between the father appointing and a court-appointed. If the father appointed him before he died, then he swears. But if the court did, he doesn't take an oath. Abba Shaul says it's actually the exact opposite. We don't yet know the reasoning, but the one thing I will tell you at this point, before we get into it, we'll get into it later today, is that there's an issue here of two different things pulling at us. On the one hand, we want people to be apitroposim. If we make them take oaths, they might say, I don't want to do this. And they're not getting paid for what they do, so what can we expect from them? On the other hand, there's a huge chance that they're taking advantage of these orphans. So we're being pulled in different directions. And the question is, what gives and in which way does it give? Urim minhu. Now the Gemara brings a contradiction to the fact that how can the Mishnah say that they can take the truma and masrot for them? It says atem. This is a drasha on the pasuk about kein tarimu gam atem truma. You're supposed to take truma also from whatever. I'm not going to go into the whole pasuk, but it's a pasuk talking about truma and masrot. And they say atem v'lo shutafin. Not if you're partners. You can't. What Rashi explains here is you can't take truma for your partner's share. Atem v'lo arisim, if you're a sharecropper, you can't take the truma for the person who you're working in his land. Atem v'lo apitropin, not apitropos, that's our Mishnah. You can't do it. And atem v'lo atorem etsheno shelo, or not anyone who does someone else's produce, right? That's not theirs, again, without their permission. So Amar Rav Chisda, right, and that Braita explicitly contradicts what we said because it said the apitropos can't do it. Amar Rav Chisda lo kasha kan la'achil kan la'niach. One is the Braita where it said you can't do it. That's because it's someone who wants to take the truma masrot so that the produce is dealt with for later, and they're storing it for many years from now or for a year from now when the orphans are old enough, and then the orphans should just do it themselves. So no one should do it for them if they could do it themselves. But if they want to feed the orphans and they need to eat now, well, of course we're allowed to do it, and that's our mission. And in fact, Tanya, we're going to bring a Braita that proves this point. That says exactly this. That's exactly what we just said. The apitropos can take truma and masrot as long as it's to feed, but not to leave it for the long term. And what else? Now we're going to, because we talked about this Braita, we're going to get into a long tangent about all sorts of things that apitroposim can or can't do for the orphans. You can sell on their behalf their animals, their slaves, their maidservants, batim, sadot, kramim, houses, fields, vineyards. Again, they can only sell their stuff not for a good investment for the later, because maybe they won't want to sell it. So don't make those decisions for them unless you need it for food. If they have nothing to live on, and you have to sell something, so sell it. You can sell for them fruits, wine, oil, fine flour, in order to feed them. But again, not to leave it for a profit for later. What else? What can you buy for them? You buy for them all sorts of things they might need for a mitzvah. Lulav, arava, sukkah, tzitzit. Okay, lulav and arava. Here we don't mean the aravot that go in the lulav. We're talking about there was a special mitzvah of arava that they would do. They would put around the altar. I assume they're talking about that because otherwise, what about the hadas and etrog? Lulav includes the 4 minim, and then there's the mitzvah of arava, which was a separate mitzvah. Sukkah, tzitzit, all these things they need to do themselves. First of all, lakachtem lachem, right? All these things, but even b'chol davar sheyesh lo kitzbah. Anything that has a limitation to it, right? A sukkah is one sukkah. A lulav is a lulav, right? It's not going to get to an infinite, whatever it could be. So what is that phrase? Why do they have to add an anything? It must be to include something else. It's to include a shofar. Even a shofar, which he doesn't necessarily need on an individual basis, it's also a shofar you can buy for him. And lochim lam sefer Torah, tefillinu mezuzot, you can buy a Torah, tefillin mezuzot. And again, it says also in anything that has a finite amount. La tuye what? La tuye megillah, also a megillah. But you can't, when they would collect money for the community and everyone in the community would have to pay up, they don't collect from orphans. Because that's something, she'en lo kitzbah, there's no set amount. Also, we don't use their money. If we need to redeem captives, we don't use their money for this. Not anything that has no specific amount associated with it. What would that come to include? This is interesting. It doesn't cost money to go visit a mourner, but just like nowadays, when people are mourning, often people send food, bring food, buy food. Okay, so also in those days, they would collect money for food, for meals that they would have at the mourner's house. We don't take money from orphans for this, even though theoretically, this is one of those mitzvot where you do for other people expecting they're going to do for you. And that maybe you would have thought that maybe the orphans do need to give money because maybe if they need it, they'll need to do it for them, but you don't. Okay, you can't take from them because again, it's something without a finite amount. They can't be their lawyer and try to come to a court and claim their case either to win or to lose. So meaning, right, even if they think they're going to lose, right? What does it exactly mean to win or to lose? But the point is, if they lose money or something for them, first of all, the orphans will come claim later, you just did this poorly, give me my money back. So therefore, we don't accept judgment in this case. We don't allow it really. But if they're going to win the case, why not? We're talking about, right, when they lose money, when they thought that they could win money, right? You never really know when you go to court if you're going to win or lose. The Rambam actually says that if they did a judgment and it actually came out favorably, then we actually say the judgment is valid. Okay. They can't sell land you have far away to buy closer land, even though closer land is way better. Or poor quality land and buy better quality land. Why is that? My time, because maybe something will go wrong with that land. Everything, it looks good, but maybe it really isn't. And then the orphans will claim, right? Why'd you do that? Why'd you sell? We had good land. Why'd you make it worse? You can't downgrade. A field is something that usually lasts much longer than a slave. Slave, right, gets older, doesn't work anymore. So you can't sell fields and buy slaves. You can't go the reverse. Because land is always viewed as a good thing, even though we just said don't switch land, but to upgrade to land is always a good thing. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees and says, my time. Okay, so you can't even upgrade to fields. Why is that? Well, fields are always a little tricky. Maybe it's not free. Maybe it's got a lien on it. Maybe someone's going to come collect it for a loan, and then you end up with nothing. Or, they have to go make a claim to get their money back from the person who sold it to them. That's a big balagan. Another thing they can't do, and this is kind of like the Truma Masrot, since they're not owning the Truma Masrot, they can't really do it. Again, we allow them, but theoretically they can't. Well, they also can't free slaves because the only person who can free a slave is the owner. And again, we're stuck. What if the slave has to be free? Now, you're not supposed to free slaves, but let's say he has to be. Good example is a chetzi. He's half, one of his masters, he has two masters, one frees him, the other one doesn't. So let's say the Yatomim are the ones who haven't. And now this slave can't marry anybody, can't marry a slave woman, can't marry a Jew. So the halacha is you have to free him. So what if you have to free the slave? What do? You can actually sell the slave, you just can't free him. So the owner has to free the slave. So what do? You sell him to someone else, and that person frees him, because then they'll be the full owner. Rebbe says, look, I say he could actually buy his freedom himself. You don't have to sell him to someone else. He could pay his way out to get his freedom. Why can you do that? Even though it's really like freeing him? Because you're basically like selling him to himself. So that works because it's more of a sale. Now they're telling us you have to do a cheshbon at the end, right? You have to bring your Excel with all your, this is what I spent, this is what I did. And when the kids get older, you got to show them all that stuff. And Rashi points out, you also need to swear that you didn't keep anything for yourself. Okay, obviously that goes back to the machloket in the Mishnah. In which case does he have to swear, in which case doesn't he? What else? Sorry, I lost my place. Right. No, he doesn't need to do a cheshbon at the end. And okay, he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to prove himself to anybody. He did this. He was nice. He did it. You don't make him show you his Excel and follow up. Ein osim apitropim nashim v'avadim ktanim. You can't make women, slaves, or children to be apitropim. Children are obvious. I mean, you're trying to protect children. You're going to put a child in charge of them. Slave in general, right? Slaves who aren't really, they weren't the most trustworthy people, or maybe they don't know enough about this. And women, again, we're back to, well, women weren't usually knowledgeable about this. Rashi actually says, why not women? Right? Rashi, by the way, says about avadim that they're not ne'emanim, they're not trustworthy. Nashim, they're not usually involved in negotiating and all that stuff. It's just not what they dealt with. So again, understanding this in those days, right, it might be very different today. Many women, property lawyers or something, would be excellent at this kind of thing. But even in their time, notice what they say here, but if the father of the orphans said, I want this person, either there was a katan who was brilliant, I don't know, was known to be, right? I've met a few kids that I would trust with those kind of things, even around the age of 12 or something. And although that's more rare, an eved could be a loyal slave who really knows what they're doing. And a woman could definitely be a knowledgeable woman. And in fact, we're going to see women today in our Gemara who are apitropin. So very interesting. Now we're going to have a case, two cases with Rabbi Meir. There was an apitropus in the neighborhood of Rabbi Meir. Who is mezabin, he would sell land, and zabin avdei, and buy slaves. Now we already learned you're not allowed to do that. Below Shavke Rabbi Meir, he wouldn't let this happen. But very interesting, this very interesting story. He saw in a dream, I'm trying to ruin these slaves, these children's money. I'm trying to destroy them, and you're trying to build it. Kind of sound like a message from God. Let them do this because I want them to buy slaves and then they'll end up with no money. I'm trying to destroy that, ruin their lives. And you want to build them up? Why are you doing this? So now, Rabbi Meir was in a big quandary. Halacha says, don't let this happen. God's telling you, let this happen. What are you supposed to do? Well, what does he do? He ignored his dream because we don't learn things from dreams, just like we don't learn things from heavenly voices. Remember, the rabbis are supposed to use their discretion, their knowledge to make decisions. This is not, even though our religion was handed down from God, is now in the hands of humans, and humans are supposed to figure out how to do things and not rely on signs from God. Very interesting story. Hanu Beitre, already we have another story now where Rabbi Meir seems to be going against the tide or against the way either God orchestrated, or here we're going to see it's Satan that orchestrates things. There was this two people that the Satan was after them. Every Erev Shabbat ben Hashmashot during twilight, they would fight with each other. So Ikla Rabbi Meir lahatam, Rabbi Meir gets there one day. 3 times Ben Hashmashot shows up until they make peace between them. Shame de Ka'amar, he heard them, the Satan saying, Vai de Avke Rabbi Meir lahu gavra mi beite. Oy vavoy, that Right, here's Satan talking. I can't believe that Rabbi Meir got me out of this house. I was supposed to be here and he kicked me out. So you see Rabbi Meir kind of interfering with the way things were maybe trying to be destined to be. And he gets involved from what seems to him to make logical sense, better to make peace between these two people, right? And after 3 times of doing it, he actually succeeds in making peace between them forever. Very interesting message to think about. Now we're going to have a similar story. Although without God involved, there's an apitropos in the neighborhood of Rabbi Shiur ben Levi. He was selling land, buying oxen. Now we already learned you're not supposed to do that, right? We learned it was with slaves, but presumably oxen are no different. He didn't complain at all. Rabbi Yossi. He held like Rabbi Yossi. Tanya Rabbi Yossi. I've never called my wife, and my ox, my ox. Why not? Ella liishti beiti. I call my wife my home because she takes care of everything. Sadi, and I call my shore my field because without my shore I can't plow my field. So he is equal to me like my field. So there you have it. You can sell a field for a shore because the shore plows the field and that's necessary. There were Yatomim who would eat at the table of a grandmother. Here you see a woman who was in charge of their stuff. They had an ox. She sold it for them. The orphan's relatives come before Rav Nachman and they say, what did she do that she sold this ox? This is like the Mishnah says. They're Yatomim who eat at her table. She has rights to deal with, right? Few relatives, you didn't do anything. But he says, but the price went up now. She sold this shore that was worth $100. Now it's worth under $50. She made them lose out. Says to them, Rav Nachman, what do you mean? The guy bought it and then it went up in price. So it's like, you buy a stock and then you sell it and then the stock goes up. It didn't go up when you owned it. So it's not like you deserve anything. But they say to him, but wait, they never paid the money yet. Okay. They gave him the land. The orphans gave him the land, but he never paid the money for it. Amar lahu, why didn't you tell me so? Im kain, well, now I can help you. Because that's something that Rav Chanilai said in the name of Shmuel. Now, before we read it, I just want to remind you, when it comes to acquiring, normally we go to a store, we pay money, and we say, I paid you the money, that's the kinyan. That kind of makes it acquired. But in those days, that was not the kinyan. Those days, it was mashicha, pulling it, or if it's land, sitting in it, right, using it. So there clearly was a kinyan here. He had acquired it. But what? When it comes to Yatomim, Rabbi Chanilai said in the name of Shmuel, a unique halacha. We're going to deal with this for the next bunch of lines. Amar Shmuel, Hekdesh works that also you don't acquire when you sell something to the temple or you have there's anything temple related. The acquiring is at the moment you give the money and not at Mashiach. So likewise for your Talmud, we're going to say it's the money. So if they didn't get the money yet, then they can actually say, give it back to me or give me the higher price. So then he ends up ruling, like, in this case it was an ox, give me the ox back or give me the higher price, and the Yatomim can do that. So the relatives in the end ended up being right. Chamrei de Rabbanit Ukvar Yatma. So there was wine of Rabbanit Ukvar the Yatom. Mashchua ba'arba'a. They bought it, they did Mashicha, they acquired it, okay, for 4 zuz for a barrel. Iyakir, but then the price went up. Bekam b'shita shita. It was 6 for a barrel. Atu the kamed Rav Nachman. So again, they come before Rav Nachman and they say, Amar lahu, hainu de Rav Chanilai bar Idi. He says the exact same thing. This is just like Rav Chanilai says. Amar Rav Chanilai bar Idi, Amar Shmuel. Nichsei yitomim harein kektesh v'lamachne le ela b'kaspa. Okay, they're like hektesh, and therefore they didn't give money yet. It's not theirs, and you can get it back. But now we're going to see that this could go in 2 directions. But kesef is not always a good thing. What if there was Mashiach and they hadn't given the money yet? So we're going to talk about what all these, we're going to have now a whole list. And if you have a Schottenstein, they have a great chart of this. I didn't have a chance to make a chart, but you can use that if you have it. We're now going to have a whole list of cases, and we're going to see what happens. Mashoch pere miyatma. So again, the Yatomim sold fruits, and this time, instead of money, they pulled the fruits, right? They did Mashicha, they acquired them. Now that's acquiring in a normal situation, but not for Yatomim. For Yatomim, it's money. They didn't pay the money yet. And what happened? The price went up. Iyakir, price went up. That's exactly what we just said. In that case, they didn't give the money yet. It's exactly like the cases we just saw. And basically, they could say, right, the Yatomim could say, give us back the fruit or pay us the higher price. But what if Zul? What if the price went down? Can they come and say, oh, now we're only paying you the 50, let's say it went down to, instead of 100 shekel, it went down to 50. And they say, listen, we're only going to pay you 50 shekel because the price went down in the meantime. And they say, oh, you did Mashicha, but Mashicha is lo kona for Yatom, only the money. So theoretically, it sounds like they could renege, right, and say, I don't want to pay you the 100. Either I'll give you your fruits back, or I'm only going to pay you 50. But if we do that, lo yeh koach hedyo chamor mihekdesh. If it was a regular hedyo case, if I was a regular person, you bought it from me, I wasn't a yatom, you did Mashicha, there's no turning back. So now we're going to say if it's hekdesh or yatom, and we're going to make it worse than for a regular person? No way. It was only to protect the orphans. So therefore, the sale is a good sale. They have to pay the full price. We're going to have all sorts of cases like this. This time, the yatomim, someone did the Mashicha for the yatomim. The yatomim were the buyers this time. For the yatomim were the sellers. Now there's the reverse case. They're buying. Iyakir. And then they did Mashicha, but that's not supposed to work. And then the price went up. So now the seller wants to charge them a higher price. So again, we're not going to make it worse than if it was a regular person. If a regular person did Mashicha, there'd be no turning back. So there's no turning back. Zul, what if the price goes down? So now the Yatomim could say, oh, we didn't pay the money yet. We did Mashicha, but that doesn't count. We should only pay you 50 shekel. Well, they thought that. But then they realized that if we do that, we're going to have a problem on the other end. And today is all about balance. If we do that, this is actually going to be worse for the orphans. Why? Well, right now, they'll only have to pay 50, and that will be good. But next time they go to buy this and they take the fruits and they say, I'll give you the money tomorrow or in a month from now, the guy's going to say, no way, no how. I'm not giving you fruits till you give me the money, because if the price drops, you're going to only pay me this lower price. So therefore, it's going to mess up orphans in the future. So no, we can't give them the discount here. This is right, a very interesting thing about the balance. And today, again, all about balance. Same thing with the apitropos taking the oath or not. So now Yatomim paid money for fruits. They bought fruits and paid the money. Zul, the price went down. So again, we're not going to make them we're not going to make them lose out. Sorry, Yave Yatme Zuze Apere, they bought Perot, and then the price went down. So they say, right, we're not going to make them lose. Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Yave Zuze Apere, they paid money for this, and then the price went down. Lo Yehe Koch Mormina Hektesh. Sorry, I'm not getting it right. Right, they paid money, and now the price is lower, and they want to get the cheaper price, right? So now a regular person could actually say, I didn't do any kinyan yet, I'm changing my mind about this. So they can actually change their mind and say, give me my money back. I don't want to do this deal because the price went up. I'm sorry, I just got confused by this. Yatme Zuze Apere, they paid money and then the price went down, right? So they say, I don't want to buy it for that high price I gave you. I want my money back. I want to renege. They can do that because anyone can do that because they didn't do Mashicha yet. They didn't do an actual acquired. Iyakir, now, what if the price went up? They already paid their money, so they don't want to pay anymore. So Severmine, they thought to say, Hanid Rav Chanilai bar Idi. Right now, in this case, it's different than the case where Chanilai spoke. Rav Chanilai spoke in the case where they were selling. But now they're buying. Now, what's the problem? If you tell them that they can now that the price went up, they want to get it for the cheaper price, well, then it's bad for them because moving out of Amabet, if they already paid the money. Now, theoretically, their stuff is in the house, right? Their payroll, which they haven't been Kona yet, are in the storage house of the owner. Now, if there's no real kinyan yet, then the owner's going to still take care of those that are in his house very well. If something happens, if there's a fire, he's going to take care of them. But if he knows that you bought them and that you might renege on the deal, right, that it doesn't really mean anything that you paid the money and it's not a real kinyan, and you can basically change your mind about this because the price went up and you're like, 1 second, you paid money and the price went up. Right. Sorry. If you're going to benefit, that you basically are going to get them for that cheap price, that now the price went up, you're going to get to, you don't have to pay any extra money. Well, then he'll just not really care about that produce anymore. And he'll say to you, because you're going to screw him, he's going to say, you know what, they got burned. And, maybe if there's a fire, he won't really protect them because he knows that you're basically going to be able to take advantage of him. So again, we want him to be on your side and want to sell you stuff and want to take care of him. And if you give him money and you don't get the produce yet, you want to make sure that eventually you're going to get that produce. And therefore, if the price goes up, then you're going to have to pay them the full price. Somebody buys, right, gives money to the Yatomim. Now we're back to the Yatomim or the sellers. They give money. Before it was that they did Mashiach, and then we said it didn't count. Now they give money for the payroll, and iyakir, the price goes up. So now, theoretically, there hasn't, the Yatomim did a sale already, so they shouldn't get any more money. But lo yehe koach hedyoch hamor mehektish. In a regular case, since there was no Mashiach, you could change your mind and say, hey, the price went up. I'm not selling you this anymore. So therefore, they can actually demand a higher price or say, we're giving you your money back. Zul, if the price goes down, again, they thought to say, right, what they're basically doing in this entire sugya is limiting Rabbi Chanilai Bar Idi and saying it's only in a very unique case where there aren't going to be future ramifications. But when we have to balance the interests of these Yatomim in the future, well, we're not going to allow this to be. So again, the price, they got money, which means basically the price went down. So the Yatomim should keep the high price and not give the people, right, give them based on the original price and not give them more produce for their money. Again, this is bad for the orphans. There's sometimes where they need money. And people are going to say, listen, we're not going to give you the money until you give us the produce. Sometimes people pay for things in advance. They pay up front. And these guys are going to say, we're never going to pay you up front because look, if the price changes, we have no guarantee and we want a guarantee. So, right, the kids could not have the produce at some point and they'll want the money first so they could get the produce and then give it to them. So basically, again, to protect them, we don't allow this halacha of Rav Chanilai to kick into effect in this case. So that was a lot of interesting cases about, right, how we balance things. Amar Rav Ashi, Ana Rav Kahana Chatmina Nashtari Diime Dizeiri Yatma. So Rav Ashi said, me and Rav Kahana, we signed on the shtar that the mother of Ze'eri the Yatom had written out. Dimizabna Ara la Karga B'lo Achazta, that she sold land in order to pay taxes for the children without announcing it. Now, there's a halacha that you're supposed to announce if you're going to sell land of orphans. You have to announce it. You have to announce it for a little while because if you're strapped for cash and you sell it quickly, or you just want to sell it because you don't have the time to invest, it's not yours, you're selling it on behalf of these orphans, a lot of time people can take advantage and they'll just take the first price they get. But we all know that the first price you get is usually not the best price you're going to find. So we basically make you announce it for a certain period of time so that you'll get a better price. Well, she sold this without a chrasta. And Rav Ashi and Rav Kana said, we signed on it. So that's a little strange. But they say, no, it's not strange at all. Now, they said there's 3 cases where we allow you to do this because you need the money right away. If the tax authorities are coming, you need land, you need money. So you sell the land even without announcing it. You take the best price. Or if you need food, again, this is all for the orphans need it. Or you need to bury one of them. Okay, or they have a relative they need to bury, you sell it right away. Amram Tzaba'ah, that's his name. He was Amram the painter. Tzaba'ah is his job. He was the apitropos of the orphans. Atu Krovim, the Kamei Rav Nachman. The relatives came before Rav Nachman to complain about him. They didn't like this guy. You're going to see a whole slew of complaints, and you can imagine the situation. Amrele, Kalavishu Makasim Yatme. Look at his beautiful clothes. He's obviously taking money from our orphans, from our relatives, and he's buying himself fancy clothes. He dresses so well because he's trying to make arguments for them and do business for them. It's just he looks much more respectable if he does that. Okay, second issue. He goes out to fancy restaurants, he wines and dines, and he's not amid. What does amid mean? Amid is, we kind of did an assessment. We looked at what his jobs are. We see he doesn't make that kind of money. He's eating way above his means. And it seems like he also might be eating, like not even paying for them right just yet or something. But it seems like they have reason to suspect this isn't his money. And therefore they suspect he's taking it from the orphans. Maybe he won the lotto. Maybe he found some item on the street. You have no idea. Right? This is a great example, right? You see someone flying business class. Like, how on earth is that person flying business class? Well, what do you know, right? Maybe they got an upgrade. Maybe, right? All sorts of things. The hakamapsid. So now they start with, okay, well, look, right? Besides all these things about him, but he's losing money. He invested their money in something, and look, it went down. So Amar Lahu, if you bring me proof that he lost money for the orphans, I'll get rid of him. Because Rav Huna Chavrin said in the name of Rav, if you have an apitropos who really loses their money, we get rid of him. The Itmar, as it says, and here's an introduction to a Machloket Tanaim about this. Machloket Amoraim, apitropa demafsid, Rav Huna Amarav misaltin alei, debech Abishila Amri lo misaltin. Rashila says, we don't kick him out. This is interesting. So first of all, what does it mean he's losing their money? So most people say, if he's definitely losing money on purpose, or he's making horrible choices, then everyone, or I would say he's doing it on somehow a purpose or negligent, then yes, we get rid of him. But when Rav Shila says we don't get rid of him, what he means is, right, we all make investments. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. We could have people who are the most successful investors and then they invest in some project that goes really bad. So it happens all the time like this. So he says you can't fire him just because he lost money for them. That happens to anybody. But in fact, the halacha is hilchata misalkin. We actually do get rid of him if he's lost money for them. Okay, now we're getting to a whole thing about the aviyatomim versus the court. If the court appoints or if the father appoints, the apitropos. So the Mishnah, the Tanakama said, if the father, then he swears. My time, again, when they get older, they have to take an oath. We didn't take any of your money. We dealt with your money properly. My time, why does someone agree to do it for the father? He must have been getting some benefit from the father. So he said, I'll be your son's apitropos when you die, and he must have gained some other benefit. So since he gained some other benefit, therefore he's doing it because he's gaining benefit from this. And again, we're going to see, the whole question is by making him take an oath, are we going to prevent him from doing this? And then the children will have nobody who's going to help them. So we say the following. If the father asks him to do it, he's obviously getting something and benefiting from the father, in which case he's willing to do it anyway and doesn't mind to take an oath. But no beitin lo yeshava, because milta ba'almahu David lebeidina, the yiramit alei shvoa tilim nuay. He's just doing it for the court. The court asked him to do them a favor. He's doing it. He doesn't get any benefit from the court. The court is not a private individual that's giving him benefits. So there's not, right? This is like doing pro bono work for the court. What are you gaining from it? Now, maybe you have an obligation to do some pro bono work, but that's a separate story. Here, they obviously didn't have that. And basically he's saying, if you're going to make me take an oath, I'm not going to do it. Like, I'll do it, but don't make me take an oath. He says the exact opposite. What's the logic in the other way? Because it's such a respectful thing that the court's asking me to be the apitropos. That to me is worth a lot, and I'm willing to do it even if they make me take an oath. But if the father asks him to do it, he doesn't have to take an oath. Why? Because he's just doing him a favor. He's not getting any benefit from it. The exact opposite of what we said before. He's doing it as a favor. And if you start asking him, oh, can you also take an oath? He's going to say, thanks, but no thanks. Interestingly, so Amar Rav Chanan bar Ami, Amar Shmuel, Hilchataka Abba Shaul. That's not so interesting. Okay, he holds like Abba Shaul. But the interesting part of this brayta we're going to see, Tanya, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Omer, Zev Zeh Shava. There's a third option, because these are not mutually exclusive. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says both have to take an oath, because neither one is really, right? Each one is gaining a benefit. Sorry, the opposite. each one is gaining some sort of benefit, and therefore they're willing to take an oath anyway. They'll do the job. They won't. No one's going to not do the job because they have to take this oath. And we want to protect the orphans. And in fact, the Gemara says, "Halacha kidvarav." We paskin this way. Tani Rav Tachli Farber Marava Kameter Rabbi Ava. One last thing about this, and then we'll move on to the Mishnah. New Mishnah. Abitropus sheminau avi yitomi mishava mipnei shu nosei sachar. And Abitropus, who the father of the orphans appointed, he has to take an oath because he makes money. He makes money off of this. So Rav Tachli Farber Marava said this in front of Rabbi Ava. Rabbi Ava says, "Amarle, at aitit kava b'chayale." Did you see this happen? And did you take your measuring thing, your kav measuring tool, and measure the money? Like, what are you talking about? Nobody pays money for this. Says, oh, what I meant to say is he's like he gets rewarded, like he gets paid, because again, he gets some sort of benefit from the father by agreeing to do this. Okay, so before we get to the next mission, let's just review. We saw in the mission number 1, the apotropsin can take Truma and Masra for them. From that, we got into all sorts of things. What can they sell? What can't they sell? How do they handle the money? What if, then we saw other things about Yitchom, about how their sale is only with money. So what if, because we got into a story, from there we got into what their kinyan is in this Rav Hanilai opinion. And then we got into a whole thing, which case does it apply, which case doesn't it apply? And we talked about all sorts of issues of balance between trying to weigh protecting the orphans, and on the other hand, protecting them on the one hand that people don't abuse them and charge them all this extra stuff, or steal their money, so to speak, between the balance of also needing to have people who are willing to sell to them, willing to buy from them, willing to be their apotropos. And that was really the main topic of our daf. Now we're going to move on to a new Mishnah, more tikkun olam. Hamitameh v'hamidameh v'hamenasech b'shogeg patur b'mezik chayav. We're not going to yet understand which one is the tikkun olam, the mezid or the shogeg. But these are all cases where you ruin something of somebody's, but you can't see it. Like if I stain your dress, you'll see it. I'll tear it, right? You'll see it. But I can mess up your stuff and it won't be noticeable. It's called hezek she'enu nireh. You can't even see the damage. So I basically took your truma, your kohen, let's say, and I ruined it. I made it impure. Okay, that's ruining your stuff, but it looks the same. It just now is tameh. Midameh, I mixed your truma stuff. I mixed your chulin, your non-truma stuff, with a pile of truma. Now we don't know what's what. And all you can do is sell, right? You have to take out the amount of truma, give that to a kohen. Since we don't know which one, just take out that amount. And the rest of it, you can only sell to a kohen because only kohanim can eat it, because anything of it might be truma, and you basically lose out. Because in the shuk, it costs a lot less money to buy that. It basically causes the price to drop. V'hamenasech. So usually this means you offered up the wine to avodah zarah, to idols. We're going to see there's a homachlok at what this means. If you did that, which again ruins the wine, now no one can drink the wine. But shogeg patur, if you did it by accident, you're exempt. V'mezid, if you did it on purpose, chayav, you have to pay back the damages. So we don't again know yet what the tikkun olam is. We're going to have to wait to see. But we're going to start today with a machloket. What is minasech? Itmar, haminasech, minasech. What is it? Rav amar minasech mamash. You really offered it up to idols. Shmuel amar ma'arev. You mixed the wine with yain nesach. You didn't actually offer it up to avodah zarah. It's to idols, but you mixed it with wine that was already yain nesach. Manda arma ma'arev lama my time alo amar minasech. If you said you mixed it, why didn't you say you offered it up? Because amar lachem minasech kimle b'derabah meaning. What do you mean? If you offered up to avodah zarah, you're liable for much more severe than money. And there's a concept: if you're liable for two things, we only give you the harsher punishment. So you're liable the death penalty for worshiping idols. You worshipped up wine to idols. You worshipped idols. So you get the death penalty. You're not going to have to pay. The Ida, Rabbi Ami, the one who says it is minasech, says like Rabbi Yirmiyah, who says, Rabbi Yirmiyah, the only time kimle applies is when both things happen at the exact same moment. But in this case, when you picked it up, the wine, my wine, you took my wine, and you picked it up to worship it up, to offer it up to your idols. But the moment you picked it up to use my stuff, you basically stole it because you're using it for your own purposes. And then you offered it up to idols. So that means first you were obligated for the stealing. After that, you were liable for the death penalty. So then you would have to pay. So that's why he doesn't agree with him. Lamanda amar minasech, my time alomar ma'arev. So the one, and again, that's why Rav thinks that it could be minasech, and you would still be liable for damage. Why didn't you think it's ma'arev? He could say to you, because ma'arev, hanu midameh. It's no different than midameh. Both are cases where you're mixing one thing that's permitted with one thing that's forbidden. So it's really one and the same. Why would you need to list it separately? So we'll get back to that in tomorrow's daf, and we'll see what his reaction is to that comment. Okay, so the end of the daf was just this new Mishnah and trying to figure out what the word menasech means, and then we'll get back to the rest of the Mishnah going forward. Wishing everybody a great day.